Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here with a tutorial that has been a long time coming. It is time for Dr. D Teaches Too Many Bones. So I'm going to be releasing several videos that showcase aspects of this game, and hopefully those videos will make it a lot easier for you to get into what I think is an absolutely fabulous board game that is well worth your time and money if you can get over the learning curve. So that's why I'm here. This video in particular is going to focus on setup because I think that looking at all of the different components during setup is a key part of learning a game. So let's go ahead and get that done. So the very first part of my setup, the first thing I place on my table is my battle mat. We're going to spend a lot of time here because the point of Too Many Bones ultimately is to defeat a tyrant. You have a party of gearlocks who are a fantasy creature type that was invented by Chip Theory Games specifically for Too Many Bones. And essentially in each game of Too Many Bones, you're going to have a certain amount of time to level them up and make progress. And then at the end of that, you need to confront and defeat a tyrant in order to win the game. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on this battle mat. Don't worry, we're going to come back to it. And given that I was just talking about how we need to defeat some tyrants, let's pick one. So if you are new to this game, you might be looking at all the tyrants just in the base box alone. And you might be thinking, wow, that's a lot of tyrants. I don't know who to pick. I feel kind of anxious. Who's a good choice? Well, the good news is that you have several different choices to start with that are perfectly fine. You can do this. So for the purposes of this game, I am choosing Molmesh. And Molmesh has a few things to recommend him as a starter tyrant. One of them is that he offers a fairly short game. Down here in the bottom right corner, you can see a number of dots that indicate the length of the game depending on the tyrant you choose. 2 dots, that ain't bad. Molmesh also gives you a little bit of breathing room as a party because this number right here is the amount of progress you need to make to confront him, and that's a total of 6. However, you have a total of 9 days to do it, which means that it's a little easier to make enough progress, and you also have enough breathing room to spend some time building your party, which is absolutely crucial to winning and also really enjoying this game. There's some further crucial information about Molmesh right here on the bottom left. These are the types of creatures that we're going to be using to build up our stacks of baddies that we're going to confront throughout the game, and those change, the mix of them changes based on the tyrant you choose. So Molmesh's card is also going to guide us as we complete that part of the setup. So when you pick a tyrant, you're determining the length of your game, and that means that it's time to put the day counter out. So if you only have the base box, here's the day counter. It's just a nice small card, and you have a day counter chip that you use to count the days. So of course you'll start on day 1. However, my copy of this game is more blinged out at this point, so I'm going to use the special day counter mat. So here on this side, we have the base game Too Many Bones map that we can use to track our progress throughout the game. If you look at the back, this is for Undertow, which I should do a separate video about in the future. But for now, we're just talking about base game Too Many Bones. My day counter chip will fit in here. And then I just have this die from the Assassin's Creed game that I'm going to put right here in Obendar to track my progress. You might wonder, where on the map should I put my tyrant? Well, that's actually determined by how much progress you have to make to confront them. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 progress to confront Molmesh. So we're going to put him right here on the map, but you also have paths of different lengths, and that basically allows you to use this map for multiple tyrants to track progress. The other thing that you need to pull for your tyrant is their tyrant encounter card or cards. So every tyrant is going to have at least one special encounter. Here you can see that Molmesh only has 1. So we have pulled Molmesh's encounter card, and we are going to use that when we set up our encounter deck. So encounters are really the heart of this game in the sense that they offer you the chance to make progress, the chance to make choices, and they really guide the story of your game as it emerges on your journey to a tyrant. So setting up the encounter deck is important. The very first thing that you're going to start with is this lovely encounter cover card that has pretty art on the back. Aww. Basically, because the text of your encounters is visible on the front of the card, they're double-sided cards, you use the cover card to kind of hide from yourself what's coming next. It's not technically required, but it's nice and I like it. The next thing that you're going to pull is all of the basic encounter cards for your game. I'm a solo player and I intend to be showing off gearlocks one by one, so I have pulled this solo encounter deck. There are 12 cards in it, but we're going to shuffle it and only use some of them per game. So I have pulled the basic game solo encounter cards. However, if you want to run more than one gearlock, which is very common as a choice even for a solo player, you need a different card set to look at. So if you are running 2 or more gear locks, then you need to find the cards that say base set general on the bottom instead of the solo deck. So collect all of these, shuffle them up, and then we're going to do the next part the exact same way. So now what's going to happen is we're going to shuffle our solo cards. And then once you've shuffled, according to the rulebook, you need to draw cards equaling the number of days that you have to defeat your tyrant minus 3. So for Molmesh, we have a total of 9 days to deal with him. That means that we want 6 encounter cards off of the deck. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to take the tyrant encounter card and shuffle that in. So especially because the tyrant card's a different color, you can see why you might want this cover on top of your encounter deck. I'm just trying not to look down right now. And then to top off your encounter deck, what you want are special events 1, 2, and 3. So in addition to the general or solo events that are in your encounter cards, you also have just a very few special cards. And specials 1, 2, and 3 are the cards that you use to start off every single standard game of Too Many Bones. These are basically the cards that launch you into a nicer journey. Trust me, you want them. And if they get repetitive, guess what? There are expansions that offer new starting cards for when you're ready. But for now, we're going to put these on top of our encounter deck, and we're going to put our encounter cover card on top. So that means that our encounter deck is ready to go. I'm going to put our tyrant over here. And now it's time for some other setup before we actually get to our gear logs. So we're having an RPG adventure. What would one of those be without the joys of loot? And we, my friends, have 2 decks of loot to work with. This first deck is a deck of cards that just says loot on the back because it's loot. So we're going to shuffle it up. Then you get the deck of trove loot. So this is special fancy loot. And you will notice that it is locked. So we cannot just automatically get this loot. Even if you draw a trove loot card, you have to unlock the loot first using a lock-picking minigame, which I will of course be showing you. But for now, just shuffle up your trove loot. And if you want to be wildly prepared, then there are 4 lock-picking dice that you can put on top of the trove loot deck, which I do like to do. I like to have things available. After you've done your loot, it's time to take care of the baddies. Bum, bum, bum. So if you remember, I said there was important information about baddies on your tyrant card. That means that our friend Molmesh is telling us what symbols to look for on chips in order to put together our sort of enemy decks, even though they're made of chips, during this game. So these symbols are: the paw is beast, the mushroom is bog, also yes, poison's coming, and then scale, which means we're going to be seeing lots of little creepy dragon babies. So essentially what you're going to do is you're going to go through all of the enemy chips, and if they have one of those 3 symbols on it, pull them. So as you can see, I've already done that for us. I've been making sure to separate out all of these enemy chip types, and the symbol is right there on the bottom right. Once you've sorted all that out, you're going to further subdivide your enemy chips by value. So there's something called baddie points in this game that's used to determine the difficulty of enemies that come out in a game. So you have 3 types. There are 20-point baddies. There aren't too many of these because you won't confront them until later. There are 5-point baddies, irritating, more common. And then you have these 1-point baddies, but really do not convince yourself that they're easy because they're not. I've got my butt whooped by some 1-point baddies before, and it will happen again. The other thing that you might want to get out in preparation for battle is this round die, so R1 for round 1. And these dice, which will help us determine initiative when we get into a battle. But they can just wait for now. And here at last is the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time to set up a gear lock, yay! So we're gonna be starting with Patches. I'm gonna be doing a gear lock guide for this game. And Patches is I think one of the simpler ones to start with. He's from the base box, he's good to solo with. So he's the first gear lock that I'm going to be showing off in detail. So we're gonna set him up as part of the setup video. So I've moved up our map because I want you to be able to focus on Patches. He's going to be our buddy for this game, and we're going to get him set up. So when you're setting up a gear lock, the first thing that you're going to get is all of their dice. So if you have the nice embroidered mats, then you can see that Patches' dice match the border on his mat. If you don't have that, it's really fine. You're still going to know because it's on the character help sheet that you probably want to collect as well. So when you're putting together your gear lock, you definitely want to get the help sheet for them. So Patches is conveniently printed on the Patches sheet. And you flip it and you see a guide to the different die faces that we are going to be going over in detail in a future video. If any of these little bullet points along here had a circle around it, then that would be a skill that Patches started with, but he does not have any of those. So we're just going to do a normal character starter setup. Depending on the difficulty you want to play at, you have a couple of options. So let's have a quick look. So here we are on page 23 of the rulebook, at least on my rulebook. And you have 3 options for how you want to start your game. The first one says Greenhorn Adventurer. Use this mode when just starting out and learning the game. Add 2 to your Gearlock's HP stat before starting day 1. Gain 1 training point before starting day 1. And then if you're knocked out during a battle, then you actually also get a little bit of leeway when it comes to dice that you've locked in that you might have been using to work on something. Casual Adventurer lets you have 1 extra HP and 1 training point. And then a Seasoned Adventurer makes you start with nothing. So I think that these difficulty levels kind of make you feel like, oh, if I were a real Too Many Bones player, I'd play Seasoned Adventurer. But I actually don't entirely agree with that. The real fun of this game is in leveling your character up. And I think that taking freebies so you don't have to spend your training points on them later because you want to develop your character further is actually a really reasonable position to take when playing this game. I don't think there's any shame in taking the Greenhorn starting stats, even if you're playing a really advanced game and you've played this game a million times, just because you want to explore a skill tree a bit further and don't want to waste that on an HP point. So I definitely recommend you pick Greenhorn or Casual. I'm going to go for Casual Adventure for this game, but I have totally just played Greenhorn because I wanted to explore a skill tree further before, and there's no shame in it. So how, you might ask, do you give yourself some HP? Well, Patches, and we're going to talk about this a lot more, has some starting stats up here in the left corner of his mat. So we are going to give ourselves, using one of these stat dice, it's just a d6 in his color, a +1 for health. And then it says that I also get 1 free training point. So training points can be used to try to boost these stats, to definitely boost these stats, or to start building up on skill trees over here on the mat. However, for Patches, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some dexterity. Dexterity is basically the amount of stuff you can do in a turn. So this number limits the amount of movement I can do in a battle, the number of dice that I can roll on a turn. You just want to have some dexterity to work with. So I'm going to give myself 1 as my free training point, and then we're going to see what happens in these upcoming encounters. And then for the final touch to setup of Patches, you want to find his chip. Every Gearlock has their own chip that's also outlined in their color. And you want to give him some HP. So we have 5 + 1, we need 6 health. And in chip theory games, typically you will mark health by taking the character chip and then stacking the correct number of health chips underneath. So in this case, 6. So 6 health chips, Patches chip, and we're good to go because it won't be very long before we are fighting a battle where we need all that health. And that is a complete starting setup for a solo game of Too Many Bones. Please stay tuned because the next video is going to be about round structure, so the steps that you take to get through a day in day lore. And stay tuned for a whole lot more Too Many Bones videos after that. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and happy gaming.